very good. I see, looks like I see the sign. Hopefully everyone can see. And again, welcome and thank you. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about NetHope. David certainly gave a bit of an introduction about who we are. And I'm going to be talking to you today a little bit about some of the research that we've done through the NetHope Strategic Alignment project. This is where we've been looking at the strategic plans and the digital investments of our members who work around the world, many of whom also work in Colombia, but around Latin America as well. And David gave a very helpful introduction to NetHope, but for those of you who don't know us, we are a global community. I should say that there are likely many NetHope member organizations in the audience. That's frequently the case when we present at events like this. So many of you may know NetHope from the inside. And so if so, thank you for that. We welcome your participation and appreciate it. But for those of you who don't know us very well, we are a global community. We've got around 65 members, which makes up the leading global not-for-profit organizations, the large federated and confederated organizations who work around the world in over 190 countries, serving on the order of 1.2 billion people around the world. And our membership also includes many of the major conservation organizations as well, working on climate change, on biodiversity, and on conservation. So these groups come together through NetHope around an agenda of digital, around an agenda of data, understanding data, being able to manage data better, and also around partnering with the tech sector. And as David mentioned, we've got around 70 technology companies that partner with us around the world. We work with many of the major technology companies that you're familiar with, as well as a number of others who are perhaps not household names, but who do nonetheless work across the spectrum of member organizations to really help them and you, where relevant, provide the services that you need. And of course, we work across the full range of humanitarian relief, international development, and conservation organization programming, and working to really accelerate their missions wherever we possibly can. Just as a side note, we've got this is a heat map of where NetHope members work around the world. We have 39 NetHope members actively working in Colombia today. And again, many of you may be on the call as well. David, I see your hand. Did you have a question or comment?
Yes, Lance, allow me to interject just one moment. You may want to click on the slideshow icon at the bottom so that we have a better view of your presentation.
Yep, absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Perfect. All right.
Much better. Thank you.
All right, very good. So NetHope really works on programming that is focused, some of which is focused on innovation. Some of you may know about our idea journey, which is where it's a digital maturity assessment across member organizations working in the humanitarian space to try to understand where they are with embedding digital technologies, new technologies into their organizations and operations, how well they're serving mission. In Colombia, of course, we've also worked with many of you in the past. The headline you see there is around the Venezuelan migrant crisis, where we spent time working on connectivity programs and on provision of relief, helping member organizations get online so they could deliver their services. And of course, it's no secret to this gathering here that if you don't have connectivity, many of the programs that we all deliver today are either at best challenging to deliver and sometimes impossible to deliver, given the nature of the spread of technology. And increasingly, we're also being pulled into the work around climate change. We've just in the last year launched a new climate intersections program at NetHope. And that's become relevant for us because every member organization that we work with is struggling with a changing climate in one way or another, whether they're on the conservation side of things, working on nature-based solutions, or whether they are working in the areas of humanitarian relief in the context of ever increasing disasters. So we work for people, places, and planet, but it's a planet that's facing a confluence of many, many crises. Those of you who follow the conversations at the World Economic Forum, I was just there in January in Davos, Switzerland, and of course the term they were using is a polycrisis. It's a convergence of many things. We've got turmoil in the economy. We do have accelerating climate change. The progress on the Sustainable Development Goals is stalled at best, and there are significant questions about whether it's even possible to reach them at this point, given the setbacks from the pandemic and other challenges. And of course, in many countries where we all work, there's a growing debt crisis, foreign exchange crisis, which has an effect on all of the ability to trade, to grow, to work, and so on. And so at NetHope, we really work on digital innovation, which we see as essential to bridging the gap. It's not the only thing that's going to help solve the problems, but increasingly in a world where more and more people are online, more and more people are using digital services and tools, using mobile services and tools, and those numbers are increasing everywhere in the world, including in least developed countries. There's another slide we have in elsewhere in one of our presentations. It's got this sort of J curve of adoption of digital tools and services and online tools and services and mobile. And that J curve is everywhere in the world. It's sort of peaking out in the developed countries, but it's also trending upward noticeably in the least developed countries as well. And so we're working to try to help provide organizations like yours with the tools and the resources and the way to think about the problems that you may need. This is some research we did a couple of years ago, looking at kind of a sample of NetHope member organizations. This is among 42 organizations. This is from a couple of years ago when we were 42. Now we're around 65. But it's the NetHope members at that time benchmarked against another 152 nonprofit organizations, and this is kind of a digital maturity assessment. And what we found is that the organizations who really have a commitment to digital often come together to work through NetHope. We are a peer learning platform. We're an organization where other organizations come to learn. And what we found is that the members of NetHope as a group tend to be more digitally mature, tend to be more engaged, more sophisticated about how they use technology in their organizations, and have an understanding about what they need to do in the future in order to continue staying at the leading edge of their work. So as I mentioned, we've done research into the NetHope member organizations. We looked at the full range of strategic plans across the membership. We had access to literally tens of thousands of documents to help understand the way in which our member organizations were looking at how they were planning to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and how they were thinking about work to the end of the decade. We've also done some work with the tech sector to understand how they're positioning themselves to provide solutions. And we've done a kind of a third dive into the digital plans of a number of countries. And what we've learned is that the 40 countries where the NetHope membership most overlaps, all of those countries have their own national digital development plans. And so our strategic alignment work is really trying to align member impact with tech sector solutions, with the goals and objectives that the countries where they operate are posited in those national development plans. From that, we've learned a number of things about what's important among the major nonprofit organizations that are working in humanitarian relief and long-term development. And at the top of their list of priorities, the thing that really kind of sort of looms large is this idea of what we call information certainty. It's also referred to by a number of our members as a single source of truth. Some of the conversations you've been hearing are refer to the fragmentation of data, around the sector, the inability to, and sometimes rightfully so, that we introduce boundaries and borders into the way information is collected to protect privacy, or to ensure that it's not used in ways that might cause harm. But that and the structure of the organizations, because of their often federated nature, operating around the world, creates challenges for integrating data and providing a uniform view of whether it's operational or whether it's programmatic. There's another block of digital competencies in the middle of all that, looking at digital skills and applied technologies. We're focusing at NetHope on the digital skills and leadership aspect of this, because we know that as technologies change, the way that we need to think about those technologies also needs to evolve. AI being a perfect example of that. It's not merely something that we can afford to adopt off the shelf. It's going to force us to rethink how we use these tools, if we use these tools. And so NetHope, actually in about a month, we'll be launching the NetHope Digital Leader, the first set of coursework in the NetHope Digital Leadership Institute, where we're going to be working with member organizations, organizations like yours, to help improve capacity for digital skills and leadership. And then down at the bottom, you'll see digital protection and connectivity. Digital protection is an area that frequently gets left for last. It's really it's cybersecurity by another name, but in the humanitarian sector, it also has some other nuances as well. We're not only trying to protect the systems that we operate in our organizations, we're also trying to make sure that the people who have access to those systems are also safe. That frequently falls down to the bottom of the priority list, but as many of you know who follow that space, with the dramatic increase in cyber attacks over the past few years, it's an area that organizations are really struggling with, and we plan to do some capacity building there as well. You'll see that connectivity is sort of at the bottom of that list, and that is an interesting point as well. I'll say more about that in just a minute. We did do a bit of an update on that. That slide that I showed you is really now about 18 months old. We just did this is a refresh from earlier this year. It kind of reinforces, in particular, this idea of information certainty. That's an area that everybody's struggling with. If you don't know what you have, you can't manage from it. You can't, and if you're not able to compare it and analyze from it, then it can be more burdensome than not. You'll see the increase in digital protection as well. Again, that's not a thing that in humanitarian networks in particular, it used to be that you put them up and you left them open because that's how you save lives. And of course, now we're aware, and the Ukraine example has some particularly egregious examples of this, where bad actors actually may go onto those systems and try to create active harm through connectivity that's been set up to really save lives. And it's also interesting to see connectivity creeping up there again as well. Let's see here. There we go. But one of the things we're learning is that localization really does matter here, and it might tell a little bit of a different story, and connectivity is a good example of that. If you see here, this is kind of a heat map of all the different these areas of digital competency, digital skills across the major countries where NetHope members work. And as you see here, this is a bit of a close-up on the column for Colombia. Colombia is actually the 36 organizations of NetHope that are working in Colombia. Really, this heat map indicates that you're strongly prioritizing a lot of these. On the one hand, that could tell a story about the fact that there's a great need within the organizations to do capacity building. But on the other hand, it also says something about how people are prioritizing their digital investments and the way that they're thinking about increasing capacity. And that prioritization is also quite helpful as well. And this little problem of internet access down at the bottom, again, keeps popping up, and I'll just share with you that in just a second. often what's happening among member organizations is there's a misaligned implementation across many of the skills that need to sort of tier and build on one another. It's kind of assumed that, you know, you'll start with connectivity, we'll protect people once they get online, we'll give them the skills once they're online and protected, then we can teach them, we can apply new technologies, and then we'll be able to work with certain information so that we can continue to build all of that out. But the reality is that they're often they're often jumbled in terms of priority. It's not a evenly stacked pyramid. People tend to focus often on technology first because it is resource intensive. It gets attention. It's a thing that people can easily understand. Then we try to sort of ram some skills on top of that, and then by the way, depending on where you're operating, connectivity could be a problem, as well as information certainty and digital protection. So that's often the reality. And when we look at these local realities and the high priority digital issues that we see, this is some of our research coming out of Africa. Again, that localization piece matters because across the major organizations working around the world, connectivity is not necessarily the highest priority. But as you see in some parts of the world, it's still very, very relevant. And so power and connectivity are both incredibly important in Africa. And the same is true for their applied technology and their platform solutions. And I see David's hand up. I think, we're getting near the end of time, yeah?
We just passed the time allotted for the presentation itself, but please feel free to share the last couple of comments. Great. And then we will open a brief window for questions and answers with the audience. Thank you very much, Lance.
Absolutely. Well, that's my last slide right here. So really the point that we like to make is innovation is really not one size fits all. And partnerships are increasingly key to our ability to be able to manage in both complex environments as well as the complex solutions that we need to provide. And so this is the full logo wall here. Again, many of you may work for our partners that you see on the right-hand side of our screen, and our members rather on the right-hand side of your screen, as well as our longstanding technology partners on the left. We think that these things together really are the way we need to go forward. So let me just pause there and I'll see what questions or comments that people may have.